What's going on, everybody? Just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Today I want to talk a little bit about resistance and how to kind of let go of it and embrace this new. And a big part of resistance comes from challenging old programming, old mindsets from the old man. And as like I kind of continue on this path of just being present and just really being happy, at least pursuing happiness. A whole bunch of it has been letting go of a lot of just errors in thinking, errors in perception, errors in beliefs and assumptions, all these things. And really, once you start questioning and expanding more and more so as you let go of fear, and the oneness starts to present itself more and more as you start to see the inner reflecting out, and how when you change your beliefs, next thing you know, you start seeing a change in your perception of reality, and then it's like, okay, well, what's possible then? It's like, am I dreaming? Am I in a simulation? And if we are in a simulation, let's make it a heavenly simulation instead of a hellish realm. If it's that simple, you change the inner and you start to level up, which it appears to be as you start to really go down this road. You start seeing how what's possible is on the other side of that resistance, and that's that new life that you actually are desiring is on the other side of that barrier that's preventing that realization. Not to sit there and judge yourself either, because so much of the resistance that the mind creates is in an effect to try to keep yourself safe from danger or a perceived threat. And so, not to be harsh on yourself when these resistances come up. Money is a great example of that, because everybody, we all have to kind of use it in like this realm for the most part. Maybe if you're in a jungle somewhere, you're not using fiat currency, but like for the majority of people with an internet connection, money is something that we have to kind of deal with and kind of understand and all these things. And it's like, it's almost like you have a threshold of like maybe a daily amount that you either want or desire to make, or just your bare minimum just to just keep the lights on. Everybody's got that threshold, and it's like really the limit on that is what you believe is, well, if I made this, then I'm okay, but if I made more than that or desired more than that, then I'm evil. It's like, I don't want to be evil, I want to be good, so I'm going to this is fine. $100 a day, that's my threshold. And a lot of the times it's completely arbitrary. It's a completely made up. It's like you're making that up. It doesn't really matter. What matters is all the programming, all the shit you're doing with it. Because if you made $20,000 a day and you're using $18,000 of that to help others or create a system that just raises the vibe of collective consciousness, there's so many factors at play, and so many, ultimately, your relation, your faith, how you deal with these things, it's all your faith demonstrated. And so, can you demonstrate your faith with $100 a day? Sure you are, because, in your mind, in this wall of resistance that's keeping you safe from ultimately your fear of God, because it's a fear of going to hell or doing some sinful thing, so that your threshold is, $100 a day, that's good, thank God for that, and I don't want to be evil, I want to do good, so anything more than that, I'm going to push away. That's a lot of what resistance is pushing things away to keep yourself safe from danger. And in that case, the danger is being greedy, being maybe lustful, because the Bible talks about the lust for money. And so there's all these things inwardly that are presenting themselves when it comes to maybe even scarcity beliefs in general. Thinking scarcity is a good thing, when ultimately the promises of God talk more about abundance and prosperity as being part of your inheritance in the new creation that you are. And so much of this is an inward energy first that draws it then to you, because God is within you, your connection to God is within, the Holy Spirit is within you, Jesus is inside of you, is within, as Jesus even said, the kingdom of God is within you. So like the more you start seeking that kingdom, it also says everything else will be added to you. And the way to look at that is as you connect with that love energy and not the fear separation energy, you start to become part of the body of Christ, and in that is God's abundance, God's prosperity, God's health, connecting with all these things. And instead of putting up walls of resistance that push them away, the other end of that is like there's stories that we tell ourselves when it comes to well, I need to sacrifice and I need to work hard to be worthy of getting anything good. And these are all parts of resistance that as you start to recognize it, though, you're able to go, wait, is that even true? Or is this just a story I've been telling myself? It's like I look out into the illusion. I see people, I see parts of myself being mirrored back, and it's like as I'm dropping these assumptions and these beliefs, well then I'm seeing a different reflection, and like I'm seeing more love. And when you start to do that, the resistance starts to almost become not so much of a battle, not so much of a tormenting thing, not so much of a if I only didn't have this, then I could be happy. You realize that God has given you everything now. This is a process of realizing it now. It's not in the future where you realize basically heaven. It's now, because God's within you now, and God is real, and love is the only thing that is actually even real. Fear is the illusion, and separation is the root of that. Being separate from God, separate from people, separate from everything. You're just a little ego in a body. That these are all stories that we tell ourselves. But as you start to drop that, as you start to realize the connected nature in this quantum field, that there is no separation between you and everything else in creation. You are one with it. And what does that exactly mean? That's something that God tells you and teaches you as you ask, believe, and receive. This is all very personal, and it's all unique. As you really start to understand this dynamic of the inner being projected out by God to symbolically show you things that are in your consciousness. It's so much easier to see shit in other people that's like maybe triggering. It's triggering at you because it exists inside of you as well. You're not superior to anything or anybody. And as soon as you drop that and go, okay, well, say you see somebody being really selfish or just being cruel or these types of things, instead of just like, oh well, I'm superior to that person, and how dare they, they're not being spiritual, they're not doing that. And as soon as you start judging it, then guess what, you're not being spiritual either. It's that kind of dynamic where it's like you can't really judge other people like that, because that connectedness is showing, God's showing you in that moment. It's like, hey, this is inside of you too, and guess what? It's keeping you in a box, and in that box, you're pushing away. You're resisting love in this moment. You're resisting something, and whatever that something is, that's something you go within and kind of through being still, through silence. That's a thing that maybe is difficult. It's been difficult for me because I've been practicing that more, like really unplugging a lot more from like YouTube. And there was a time where I was like listening to a bunch of audiobooks, which I enjoyed that. I felt like that was like, I feel like everything's happens for a reason. It's just like a different season. But like in this particular chapter of life, I want to get more comfortable in silence, not have to be distracted by somebody else's opinion, distracted by somebody else's perspective. And not to say that that you don't value these things. I value people sharing their experiences and sharing their point of view, because we're all unique, and that's part of this creation. Is like the uniqueness that you see in a snowflake is the same with people. Everybody is different. Literally everybody's in their own bubble of reality. And instead of like comparing, like, oh, my way I see reality is superior to yours because you're primitive, and because it's like everything boils down to either love or it needs some love. That's and it starts with you. It's like, do you feel love, joy, peace? Are you happy? Are you stuck in your mind? Are you in fear? Are you feeling constricted? Do you feel that you have a desire that God put in your heart to do that it's impossible for you to achieve, and so you're going to sit there and be miserable about it? When all things are possible and there's nothing stopping you from achieving anything. That's part of the thing that everybody's got their kind of unique experience, and that maybe is part of my unique experience. Is chasing maybe a dream, chasing some inner ambition and achieving it, and doing that over and over again through entrepreneurship, and in doing that now. The thing with like the handyman business I have, it's so obvious that God provides the customers. It's like the addresses will be these synchronistic numbers, the times that people will call, the duration of the calls, the texts, the times they come in, the license plates you get in the people's houses. They have some scripture on the wall that connects exactly what's happening in your walk at that particular moment. And it's like over and over and over and over again. There's so little stress in this handyman business, and compared to like the music business when I was only doing now. I just kind of did little looking on LinkedIn. It's like the music business is like going on 10 years I've been doing now. I can't remember if that's in the summer where that threshold's going to happen, but then the handyman business is like 4 years old. And both, so it's like having experience doing both ways. The one way of entrepreneurship is like basically 80-hour weeks and just nonstop working and grinding and sacrificing, and but all this kind of just through physical force and effort, and it works. But there's a better way. There's an easier way, and there's a less rat race way. With like music, it was always like the next thing. It's like, oh well, I got something on the radio. Well, maybe it'd be better to get something on TV. Oh, maybe it'd be better to get something on a more popular TV show. Oh, maybe a better movie. Oh, maybe it'd be great if some A-list actor or actress is in this movie, and it's just always this next thing. And there's a temporary satisfaction immediately followed by that didn't bring it didn't bring the accolade. That didn't bring the whatever the thing that the mind is thinking will make you happy from chasing this outside illusion. When you flip it around though, when you start becoming more and more joyful in the moment, almost to a point where you're looking at everything that's happening as like being drawn to you now, and it was a kind of a awesome weird space to be. It feels very game like a video game of things just. If you're, I just want to be still. I just want to be present. I just want to just be in silence. Because nothing's hurting me. Nothing's bringing me problems. I'm actually enjoying it. On some level, getting some spiritual insight. Some internal things or whatever. Whatever. Some eureka moments or whatever. And like, the next thing I don't know, you get a phone call, you start, like everything around you starts like coming alive and trying to get your attention. And it's like, I don't want to give my attention to shit. I just want to just sit right now for maybe 10, 20 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 3 hours. I don't even know. But then it's like all these things start being drawn to you. And, you start to sit there and like getting mad about it or whatever. But then even then you start to realize how, well, why am I getting bothered by this? Why am I reacting out of fear? And the switch starts to come, in entrepreneurship, where it's like, you realize that it's the inner faith that God provides that actually brings the customers. Like for this handyman business, I don't do much. My phone just goes off. It's like, and that's been the flow for the past 4 years, where it's like very little advertising, very little upfront money. Like Like everything just came together, and it's been super easy and like rewarding at the same time. As soon as the mindset started to change to how can I help others, that was the change. And part of like the resistance, letting go of resistance, is a lot of the resistance is coming because the foundation is like, no, how does this serve me? Me. And when you flip that and you start to go, well, how does this help others? How can I flip this to be a blessing for somebody else? Because a lot of like the resistance I feel is, am I being selfish? Am I, and that's like one of the bigger resistances I have is like, well, is this selfish? Is this doing my will versus like, I want to do God's will, even though now it feels like, God's will and my will, they're starting to feel like they're coming together more and more into like oneness. And in that, then it starts to feel like, well, am I being deceived now? I'm used to doing it wrong. Is this actually right? It's like a fear of being right versus a fear of being wrong. And it's like, I don't even care about being right or wrong anymore. It's just like, is this bringing fear or is this not? And like, looking more and more with a trusting lens, because a big part of like my resistance personally is not trusting people and not trusting a lot of shit, because, I fell into this pattern where I had that inner belief, and then I started to attract, untrustworthy people and evidences that showed, well, yeah, I'm right. I shouldn't be trusting people. Oh, I shouldn't, put myself out there like that because, and I'd have all these justifications because, it would be drawn to me, these situations, these events, these circumstances that proved it right. And that's so much of what the resistance actually is like this track record of thoughts and beliefs that have been maybe in error, and then because of that fear that and the emotional triggers that come along with it, believing those are real, well, then next thing you know, then it starts to manifest these things like a magnet, and it's like, well, there you go. There's more evidence that just shows that I need to be in this little box, that I need to be in this prison in my own mind because it's not safe. There's danger, and that's so much of where these walls of resistance are coming from. Is, okay, well, that didn't work. I got hurt, so I don't want to do that again. And then you start recreating the past every time something pops off in the present. And you go through enough of these trauma cycles, these feedback loops from hell, basically, where it's like you recreating drama, chaos, and pain over and over again unconsciously, and then just reacting to it. And as you're reacting, you're the box that you're building to keep yourself safe gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and until you get to a point where someone comes up to you and says, hey, you don't have, you can be free. You don't need to be afraid all the time. You don't need to be anxious and being tormented. And then the resistance immediately comes up and is like, who is this dumbass? He don't know what's going on with me because I've got this situation that happened and then this and then this. It's like, this guy's out of his mind. But it's like, as soon as you start to challenge that in your own self, and you need prove it to nobody but your own self, because as you start to do that, and as you start moving in a direction where you're letting go of the fear, you really focus on, I want to be in a healed path. I want my mind to be healed. I want my situation to be healed. And looking at like God as like being a healer, and not just us. Because the old man programming, looks at almost like God as being this judge in the sky that's just looking for you to fuck up so he can just punish you unendingly and making you suffer and hate yourself and all these things that just don't make any sense. It's like, if you personified that, I mean, look at Jesus as like a personification. He was dragged through the street. He got betrayed. He all this shit towards the end. Where it's just like, he got arrested on some bullshit, got snitched on. And then sitting up there with like a murderer or something. Whatever. They let the murderer go. Next thing you know, he's beaten, dragged through town, spit on, made fun of, fucking nailed to a cross. I mean, it's easy to kind of like I don't know, not think about that as being painful. But just have you ever smacked your finger with a fucking hammer? I mean, just really, and then you start to compare yourself, which is probably not the best thing to do, because like for me personally, ever since I quit smoking, I've been really processing and letting go of a lot of anger, which might be weird, for some people to be like, oh, well, I thought you, I don't know, we're like a loving person. It's like, well, I'm evolving more into that, but there's a lot of bullshit that I gotta let go of, and like, I think, if someone like, and even when people come up like kind of being rude or something like that, I'll snap right back at them. I don't got a problem doing that. I realize, the more I do that, the more I actually feel it inwardly as like I hurt myself in some way, because then I'm sitting there, in my own mind, and a big thing I've started to realize is, how suffering is a programmed way of thinking, that it actually solves problems by making someone suffer. They'll change their behavior, and it's easy to say, well, I don't want that in my own self. But if you're married and then you get like a fight, your spouse could be out just doing whatever, and then you're stuck in your own mind, like hoping that they suffer as much as you're suffering so that the behavior changes. And then you start to go, well, I'm suffering right now. Is this helping me? A lot of times you just, no, it's not even helping me. And when you're looking at, situations like that, and it's like, well, I want to inflict fear and torment on another person to change their behavior. That's part of that conditional love that we, in the United States, at least what I've experienced, when growing up and even being a parent on some level, you catch yourself, redoing these same patterns of, well, if you don't do your chores, and, I'm going to take your iPad and make you suffer. And it's like, is that who I want to be? Do I want to keep recreating these cycles, causing programming and conditioning that, it's like, no, I don't want to do that, obviously. And it's like, well, why am I doing it to myself then? Then you start catching, it's like, well, I'm harder on myself than I am on anybody else. And I'm not being very nice to anybody else. And I'm especially not being very nice to myself, because I'm letting this resistance, I'm letting, this inner programming, but, not to sit there and judge yourself either, because then it shows you something you might not have been aware of that's been going on unconsciously for however long. So when you become aware of that resistance and that programming of thinking, oh, well, suffering is good, putting fear on others, changes behavior. So when you let that go and go, well, it hasn't changed my behavior, it's made me worse, and it's just made me more angry, and it's made me more spiteful, and it's made me this and that. Then you start to realize that love is the only real solution that makes sense. And when you see that resistance that comes up, and it goes, well, no, you need to suffer, you need to through your own effort do X, Y, and Z to get some reward. And that's like with so much of this, when you already been given your reward, perfect love casts out this fear. And so if you're being tormented, if you're experiencing these resistance, realize that the only fix for that is love, and more fear and torment and grief and frustration is not going to help you. And it doesn't help anybody. It never helps anybody. And that's part of the cycle of insanity. It's like, well, maybe this time, it hasn't worked successfully ever, but this time it'll be different. That's the cycle of insanity. That ultimately, is part of the old you, which you're not that anymore. You're not insane. That behavior is insane. That's an insane thought, and that's why so much of this is correcting errors in thinking. And as you correct the errors in thinking, you realize that you are already happy. You're already joy. You're already peace. These are states of consciousness of who you actually are. Once you let go of this resistance, once you let go of that fear, once you let go of this, this is how I'm going to keep myself safe. Because that doesn't keep you safe. It makes you unsafe. That's part of the insanity. It's like by believing these things, it's counterproductive. It's actually making it worse. So the insane thing is this time it'll be different. it ain't going to be different. You just got to let it go. That's how it becomes different. You're new now, and everything is new. In reality itself, it does not function the way the materialist point of view of reality works is wrong. Basically, things work quantumly, and you start to see that more and more so as you become present and still, and grow your faith, and as you let go of the limiting beliefs, the assumptions, all this stuff that comes up as forms of resistance. Not to sit there and be like battling the resistance, but look at that as, okay, well, this is showing me an unconscious thing that's preventing, that I'm pushing away love, in favor of creating more fear and hell. It's like heaven's always trying to come to you. What you desires you. Heaven desires to be one with you. You can put up walls of resistance, and God respects your free will. And if you make a new choice though, of like, well, I just want to experience love and heaven, basically, that's what I desire. I'm not going to sit here and resist that from happening. You might feel then some resistance that goes, well, maybe you're not worth it. Maybe you're not good enough to experience that. And it shows you these inner programmings that are in error, that you can then go, well, that's not true. I am perfect. I'm perfect. I'm a masterpiece. God created me. Why do I think this? And then you start to go down that process of letting it out of your consciousness, correcting that error, and you ask God to help you do that. Ultimately, don't let the illusion. Don't let people out here be your go-to. If anything, use it as a mirror to show you, to go within. And with that being said, I like to wrap these things up with a quote-unquote random Bible verse. Nothing's random. God's 100% in control of literally everything and speaks to us in the moment. I just want to give God a chance to speak to you, who's ever listening now. Let's see what God's got to say. Genesis 17:1-4. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect, and I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. There you go. And with that being said, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing. Oh, shoot. What is going on here? There we go. Liking, sharing, subscribing, all that kind of stuff. I appreciate your support in the spiritual and in the physical. I appreciate your attention for this long, and hopefully I've been a good steward of your attention. And with that being said, until the next now, God bless.